Our first guest tonight is the new analyst for BYU football broadcasts on BYU Radio, joining Greg Wrubell for the Cougars' first season in the Big 12. He played defensive tackle at BYU between 1996 and 2000, proudly wore the bib uniform. Our pleasure to welcome local radio host and the newest member of the BYU broadcasting family, Hans Olsen, to the Wise Guys. We're looking at number 67 from the Colts, and now here's the man who wore number 67. Welcome to the show.
Man, look at those digs, guys.
Hey, wait. First of all, I want to know if what Dave just said is even true. You proudly wore those bibs? Did you like those?
I didn't mind the bibs.
Oh, wow.
I didn't mind the bibs. I thought it was pretty original. I thought that they were, at the time, I thought they were pretty trendy. They did kind of emphasize the gut and made you look kind of chubby. A little bit too much, but at the time I didn't mind them too much.
For a guy,
I think they get more hate than they deserve.
For a guy who likes barbecue, it seems appropriate there would be a bib that would you'd just be with a bib. You can play and then you can go eat.
Dang right, man. Barbecue. Love anything that you put mustard on. Anything you can dip in ketchup. Love it all.
It seems appropriate.
You guys are looking good. What, are you in the same room? How does this work?
Yeah, we're right apart from each other.
This is like this is a studio built especially for the show. It's in a secret location. We could tell you at some point. Greg knows because he's here already.
Yeah, because Greg's here.
But we only give it out to certain people for safety reasons.
Because we don't want trouble, Hans. Yeah. We don't want any trouble.
And it's built specifically for the show. It's pretty fun. And
I can see the crowd storming that place.
And in the backhands, you see all of the future Big 12 represented. And so, we wanted to get this show going. So we're not quite a year into it. The year leading into the Big 12 to really make it a show all about BYU and all about the Big 12. And so studio built specifically for this.
Great, man.
It
Fantastic.
Seems appropriate that you're on with us tonight because Blaine and I called your first touchdown, a fumble recovery against San Diego State. You rumbled 24 yards to the end zone in a 30-7 win. What do you remember from that moment?
Oh, man, that was a magical game, man. I'd had, I think, 2 sacks leading up to that touchdown, and my entire family came. Everybody was there. I've got a couple sisters in Southern California, so they brought their families, and then my mom and dad had come, and my brother, and I had an aunt and uncle there. We were just packed, and it was one of those games, Blaine, I'm sure you remember some, that everything comes together, and it just feels like nobody can stop you. The angles are right, and your energy is up, and the game plan fit what you do. And Rob Morris hit the quarterback, and the ball squirted loose, and I was able to scoop the thing and run in for it. The cool thing is some of the fallout on some of these things, people don't see some of these things that the NCAA does for these big moments like that. I actually got Player of the Week, NCAA Player of the Week, and the NCAA sent $3,000 to my high school to give as a scholarship in my name. And it's cool little things like that were kind of a fallout of that. But that was a fun game.
That's a pretty cool fallout. We've had a number of your teammates on the show. It's about time we got you on the show. And we're excited about this. But we've been able to ask him this, and I wanted to ask you this because we've gotten a little bit different feel from everybody. You were also in the locker room prior to that Lavell Edwards final home game against New Mexico when President Hinckley dropped in to address the team. First of all, how cool is that? And what do you remember about that moment?
I remember Lavell about 5 minutes before President Hinckley came in, grabbed me by the arm and said, "Don't embarrass me." And because he kind of had me coined as the guy that would probably embarrass him or embarrass the team. And I was just kind of locked with fear when he came in because that was the president that I really grew up with and I had a tremendous amount of respect for. And I remember in that moment just wanting to represent Lavell well. That's really what I remember thinking. I want everything of this day to go perfectly for Lavell because I knew that the stadium was going to be named after him. I knew that it was kind of his day, his moment. And it was my senior day as well. But you kind of just put it in the back of your mind, and you think, all right, well, y'all have my senior moment with my parents. That's all that really matters. And the emphasis was on Lavell. I just wanted to make it a beautiful send-off for him because I loved him. You know, guys, when he recruited me out of Weiser, Idaho, I had a lot of different offers, and I had actually committed to Tom Osborne at Nebraska. They won back-to-back national championships. And Tom Osborne flew into Weiser, Idaho in a little Learjet and came and saw me during the onion harvest and knocked on my door at 7:30 in the morning before I went into wrestling practice and said, man, this place stinks like onions. And I said, yeah, it does. And he came in and I committed to him. I verbally committed to him that morning. And I remember thinking, I don't know if Tom Osborne's going to be there. And I remember I got an opportunity to talk to Lavell about 2 weeks after I verbally committed. And I asked Lavell, I said, Lavell, will you be there all 5 of my eligible years? Will you be there? And he said, I absolutely will. And he committed to it. And I remember thinking how incredible it was that I was leaving the same year he was leaving, and he held up to that commitment. I thought that was pretty incredible. Tom Osborne would have been there for 3 years of my eligibility. And the other 4 coaches that I was interested in maybe playing for, they all left as well. So Lavell was the only one that actually stayed. So I got to spend that whole time with him. And that was in the back of my mind during that day too, thinking, how cool is this, that this guy held up his end of the bargain and kept his promises to me. So a lot went into that day.
So when President Hinckley looked at you and said, hands, don't muff it, and he said that to everybody, you know, there was no way you could go. Now, New Mexico didn't take a knee, but there was no way you guys could lose that game.
I think I bumped our quarterback and I said, he's talking to you. I can't remember who our quarterback was. I think it was Brandon Doman at the time.
Yeah.
And because we went through like 6 quarterbacks that year. That was a really rough season.
We talked to Brandon about. It's funny that you say that Lavell grabbed you and said, "Hey, don't embarrass me." and Hans is from Idaho, right?
Yeah.
He's from Weiser, and we were number 1 in the country. We had 1 game left, but we got invited as a team to go up and have dinner with the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12 Apostles up in the Joseph Smith building. I'm not sure what it was called back then. Oh, it was a Hotel Utah back then, right? And Lavell gathers the whole team around, and he's like, guys, we're going up. I don't want anybody to embarrass me. And, guys, this is Sunday best dress. And he looks over and he goes, Walt Manuel and all you Idaho guys, that means no bib overalls. That's what Lavell said. He always had an Idaho joke. He always had an Idaho joke up his sleeve all the time. So
hey, the next
was he not the best, Blaine?
He was. The people that weren't close to him and didn't get the exposure that we all did don't understand his sense of. He was the funniest person. His just kind of dry sense of humor. He would just kill you with the little dry, sly jokes, and he always had them, and he always had the right quip for the right moment, and not enough people got to see that side of Lavell. I think he had some great ones out in the media, but he was constantly doing that with us, and that was really, really fun.
Such a beautiful human being. Just from every angle, a beautiful human being, and could make you feel warm and loved, and could make you laugh your butt off, could also get your butt off a chair and get you working. And I am beyond lucky to have the times that I had with him, whether it was on air doing the Legends show with him and Ron McBride for 5 years, or I actually ended up helping him clean out his father-in-law's house after his father-in-law had passed away. And I had an opportunity to spend an entire weekend with him in a working capacity, just to learn more about him. And he loved to tell jokes, and he was a terrible driver. The worst driver I've ever met in my life.
that is all I can say to that is truth.
Didn't Patty do most of the driving?
She did a lot of the driving.
Yeah.
Hey, Hans, I was going to ask you this, the whole spring game, alumni thing, everything this weekend, when Patty, had her role at the beginning, and she was out there with everybody and walked out there with everybody. I was having a hard time keeping my composure and doing the broadcast to see Patty out there, because it was so touching and so appropriate to have her out there in his stadium, participating in that and tying the past to the present. What were your thoughts on having Patty there this last week?
I think the more Patty, the better. The more you can incorporate her, the better. And Blaine, I just about 3 weeks ago went to Winona Ramage's funeral. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many people out there know Tom Ramage, but it's hard to talk about Lavell without talking about Tom Ramage.
Right.
Tom was a defensive line coach. He was my defensive line coach, and his wife was so close to me and so close to my wife. And so my wife and I went to Winona's funeral. And while we were there, we got into a lot of different discussions with all kinds of people. Tom Homo was out there celebrating her life. And Chris Hoke, one of my old teammates, who was with the Steelers, he came back from Pittsburgh, and he and I were there together. And the conversations of Winona and Patty and those amazing women that were so integral in our growth as men, that helped us as we brought wives and started to build families, that helped us manage those relationships and set expectations. And she was so important. And Blaine, I don't know if you got married while you were playing at BYU, but Patty was so incredible. She held different cooking classes with the wives. And so Amanda would go to the cooking classes and hang out with her. And she would tell these girls what to expect from us as players and just kind of help their relationship. So when I see Patty, I just see mom. I see a woman that was so influential in my growth for the most critical 5 years of my life. So to see her on that field, anytime BYU honors her, anytime she gets any opportunity to speak, I just think people need to listen, and we need to all just love and respect everything that she gives us, and don't take her for granted right now.
Amen to that.
Because
for sure.
Winona went so fast. She didn't, in reality, she did, but it just feels like it went so fast.
New football analyst on BYU Radio, Hans Olsen on the Wise Guys tonight, live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and wiseguys.com. Before we bring in Greg Wrubell, your last game in the regular season, you beat Utah up there in a dramatic come from behind. There were a group of guys that carried Lavell off the field. Were you in that pile, or where were you after you took down the Utes that night?
I'm sure I was trying to convince the guys to carry me off the field, would be my guess. Trying to pull Lavell off the top of the pile and see if I could climb up there would be my guess. No, I was under there. I was one of the guys that was hoisting him and walking away with him. But that was an insane night because we had put our hearts into it. I know I played a really good game in that game too. I had a sack and a half going into that final defensive series, where after we scored, Utah had an opportunity to get back down the field. They didn't have a ton of time, but our defense, we all had to be laser focused and get out there and do it. And so I felt really good about the game, but that was it. That was the sending off point. We knew that we weren't going to be going to a bowl game. I believe it was before that game that we were told, win or lose, we wouldn't be going to a bowl game. So we kind of knew as a senior class that was it. So I'm sure Kalani Sataki and I were messing around doing something, and Satemanali was probably singing and had his ukulele. I don't know. It's all the norms, man. It was just a magical night. That's still one of the most memorable, one of the greatest games I've ever played in.
Well, it ended, right? I imagine as you're watching Doman drive the team down the field in those last few seconds, there had to be some high anxiety.
Well, first of all, Staley didn't fumble.
Yeah, there you go.
Agreed?
I agree with that.
I agree. Blaine agrees. Greg agrees. Ron McBride does not agree, I don't think. But
well, I've been doing a show with Ron McBride for the last 8 years. And let me tell you, he doesn't agree. No.
Of course not.
He 100% thinks that was a fumble. But that wasn't a fumble. Secondly, I think that Jonathan Pittman doesn't get the BYU recognition he deserves because in those 2 catches, he may have been the most memorable receiver in BYU Utah history, BYU Utah rivalry game history.
Yeah, 2 crazy catches. People sometimes forget it's not just the one. 2 catches in that game that are ridiculous, right?
Yeah, it was. It was 2 insane catches. And then Brandon Dolman with the option look off the right side. Spectacular. But yeah, I don't know if you've heard the story, but I was on the sideline on that offensive drive and I was crying and I was going around to all my senior teammates, hugging them, telling them that it's been a real blessing playing with them for the last 5 years. And I can't believe we lost our senior year against these Utes. And we're all just going back. And one of my teammates, Satem Anali, heard me and came over and grabbed me by the face mask and started yelling in my face, you know better than that. You know that this game isn't over. And he's pointing up in my face mask and spitting across my face. And you better get ready. We're going to have one more defensive stand. This is good. We are going to score. And I'm like, Satima, it's over, man. It's over. The sooner you understand that, the quicker you can get over this terrible loss. And of course, it happened. And we all, man, it was just an incredible night.
Let's have Greg hop in and join us. We got some more football questions for you. We got a lot of questions for Greg, so he can join us as we grill you a little bit, and then we'll let you go and we'll turn the questions on him. But
very good wheels on these chairs. Like
Greg, it's good to have you in the studio.
And he almost ended up in the other room.
We like to stay mobile in here just in case. We can dodge some darts.
Should I straighten up my tie for the boss? Like, I don't know.
No, you look good. He's got a sweatshirt on. We're all good.
You're already zipped all the way up. Notice that I wore my white snow shirt tonight, just like
Kevin
Eubank. Just like Kevin.
Just like Kevin. Yeah, the snow coat. You got the snow shirt.
I got my snow shirt on. So,
Hans, let's talk about the NFL real quick. Let's go to December 30th, 2001. The Colts are playing at the Rams. You make your NFL debut at defensive tackle. Kurt Warner throws for 359 and 3 touchdowns. Marshall Faulk runs for 118 and 3 touchdowns. The Rams win big. So my question is, what was it like trying to defend those two?
Well, a couple things. First and foremost, I broke my hand, a pretty severe hand injury, and that was my first game back on active roster in pads and playing. So, as you mentioned, it was just an incredible night for me. And I remember a couple of things from that day. Number one, the trivia question happened to be about my Uncle Merlin, of course, being a legendary Ram. And so I'm sitting there in warm-ups, and I'm like, do I have to hear about my uncle right now? Really? Like, I can't get away from it. Number two, I got thrown in the second quarter, and they had an offensive lineman, Orlando Pace.
Yeah.
Some might remember him.
Yeah.
And I remember I came out of the huddle and went to line up, and I heard him say fresh meat. And I was like, geez, that's not what I wanted to hear. And I think it was my second place scrimmage. I was able to get a hold of Falk's leg, and he carried me for about 5 years, or five yards, and finally got him down. It was just cool. I was a little bit starstruck because I watched them win the Super Bowl. You remember that Rams Tennessee Titans Super Bowl? That was a memorable Super Bowl for me. I think it was my senior year. It was the year before or 2 years before. And so I was a little bit starstruck for the moment, but I just remember thinking I'm finally going to get a nice paycheck out of this. That's what I was most
That's important. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to think in my mind of the years, because Spencer Need was there plowing the road at fullback for Marshall for a couple of seasons with the Rams. I'm not sure if he was there that year when you played against him or not. Do you remember if you played against Spencer? It must have been. I think it was a year later that Spencer came.
It was a year later.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a year later. He was playing, I think, his senior year.
Yeah.
That year that I stepped on the field against the Rams. So I didn't know Spencer Need was running fullback for.
Yeah, the Rams moved him over to kind of H-back fullback, and they just said that, listen, your job, road grader, just plow the road for Marshall. He's like, that job I can do. And that's what he did. For a couple years, he made a living doing that, plowing the road for Marshall.
Hey, the next week though, you had a home game and a better outcome against the Broncos.
Yeah, I remember that game well too. Made a couple of mistakes in that game. You know what's funny? Talking about NFL time, I feel like I've got so many mistakes that all I remember is the bad times. When you're playing in the league, it's like every play you wonder. It's when you're in my position, you feel like every play might be your last. And so those games, you remember all the bad moments more than you remember the good moments. And I remember just thinking, I got to get through this rookie year. Got to find a way to scrape through this rookie year. We kind of had an idea that Jim Mora was going to be fired that year.
Yeah.
That was the playoff year. You guys remember playoffs?
Yeah.
Hey, we'll be lucky to win another.
That quote lasted longer than his career.
It did.
Oh man. I was in that locker room before he went to the media podium. And if you thought he was animated in the media scrum, in the locker room, he was screaming about how he's got enough money he could move to Hawaii and never have to lift a finger for himself again, because I got plenty of money, every penny you could ever imagine. I don't need you guys. I don't need this job. And then he goes to the media and we're like, this isn't going to go well with the media.
No. Well, I mean, we were talking about it. Those two NFL appearances on defense, you get Marshall Falk and Terrell Davis.
Yeah.
That's like, how about that, right?
He was a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a problem. He was carrying everybody all over the field. Those are two great backs. Those were fun years to be in the NFL. It was when they moved me to offensive line that things got really hairy. Going over to the offensive line side and trying to learn Peyton Manning's offensive playbook, that was a nightmare. Holy cow.
So Tony Dungy comes in and he calls you in. He says, Hans, I know you've been on defense. I want you to move to offense. And you said,
I'd rather be a free agent, maybe move around, look for defense. I don't know if that's going to happen. And he said, I just talked to Howard Mudd. Howard Mudd believes you can do it. Howard Mudd was the offensive line coach. He's considered like the great lineman guru. In fact, if you were to talk to Coach Funk about Howard Mudd, you're going to get some gushing, because Coach Funk gets a lot of his offensive line sets from Howard Mudd. And he said, Howard Mudd believes in you, that he could change an offensive line. And I said, all right, let's go. And I'd had a lot of respect for Howard. Howard played against Malcolm Merlin back in the mid 60s and early 70s. And Howard committed to put me on that offensive line and really gave me everything he had. And I did get into that second. So it was my third year, and I got into that second year. And I just really couldn't grasp the offensive line responsibilities in that league. It's really in depth. It was really tough. I needed a little bit more offensive lineman background to be able to pick up what they were putting down. If
it was easy, more people would do it, right? And they don't do that at all.
It just doesn't happen that often.
So, hey, we brought Greg in. We're going to talk about sports radio and radio calling the games. You host a daily radio show in Utah with Scotty G still, right? With Scott Gerard on KSLSports.com. You also start working with Greg, sitting right next to me as the football analyst for BYU Radio this fall, which we're all just pumped about. When that announcement was made, we're just so thrilled to have you down here working with all of us. What's the difference between being a radio host and now making this jump and being a game analyst on game day and working with this guy?
And just know Greg's going to answer. He's going to answer after your answer.
Yep.
Okay. So I think all three of you can really relate to this. So this game, I love this game so much. I miss playing it. There was a couple things. Number one, I couldn't play it anymore. Number two, I couldn't coach. I gave coaching a try. I can't do it. I don't like kids, and I don't like kids' parents, and I don't like coaching. So I couldn't coach. So how do you get as close as you can to the game? Well, you call the action. And I really discovered that when I started calling these bowl games, that being in the locker room and talking with the coaches and learning attributes of these players and being the in-game call where I'm watching all of the different fronts and different chess moves from coordinator to coordinator, trying to figure out how to combat. It's the closest you can get to the game without being a player on the field or a coach on the sideline. And when I got the initial call, it was the first surge because I did not want to leave this market. I want to be in this market. And I knew that if I was going to do these calls full time, it would have had to been probably out of this market. And when I got this call, I still get the butterflies thinking about that call and this opportunity because it puts me so close to the game, as you guys know.
Did Greg call? Who called you? Was it Greg that called you?
It was Greg.
So Greg, so let's hear how this.
I want to hear how this went down and what his reaction was.
You said, "Hey, hands," and what?
Well, we're live here on a snowy night.
Yeah.
It was a snowy afternoon. It was a couple of months ago. I was driving to the Marriott Center to call a basketball game. It was on my drive to the ball game that I decided to give Hans a call. And the conversation lasted the drive, and then I parked in my spot at the Marriott Center and stayed parked for a while and talked some more. And it was a really cool conversation. And again, it was kind of out of nowhere. I've known Hans for a long time, but I'm not the kind of guy that just calls Hans up to shoot the breeze. And so when I placed the call, it was an eye-opener for both of us, I think, as to what each of us had to say and how each of us would react and respond. And I was struck by how much the idea meant to him, how much the prospect meant to him, and how earnest he was about, if this were to go any farther, about wanting it to be the right fit in every way for everybody. And I had a feeling, and I shared it with him that day, you will be absolutely the right fit. And I had that confidence from day one in talking to him that this was going to be a good decision. And so I'm just glad it progressed step by step as we went on, again, weeks and weeks later to finally get this done. But from that first conversation, that was what remained with me was earnestness and sincerity and love for the game and love for BYU and wanting to make Cougar Nation happy if this were to be the direction we go. And I felt comfortable from day one, and that comfort just increased with every ensuing conversation and text message and meeting and everything else.
How cool was it to get all that done, Hans, and then you look at the schedule, and you two get to be pioneers heading into the Big 12 for BYU's first year in the big time, and then you look at the venues, you get to go call the action in historic Texas, even Lavell Edwards Stadium, but around that league. How excited are you? Which spot are you looking most forward to, you guys?
Oh, man. I am beyond excited to get into some of these places. So it's funny because I've got some old Colts teammates and old BYU teammates that are dispersed all across the country. And one of our first stops is going to be Arkansas.
That's a big one.
And yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one in playing the Razorbacks. My favorite all-time Colts teammate is a tight end from Arkansas named Joe Dean Davenport. And he's a chicken farmer. And Joe Dean and I used to sit in our lockers next to each other. And Joe Dean would say to me, "Hey, buddy, as soon as I get $1 million, I'm going to leave and I'm going to buy me a chicken farm and I'm going to farm some chickens." And he got $1 million, guys, and he was gone.
He's out.
The next day.
Good for him.
He did. He took his $1 million. He went and bought a chicken farm out in Arkansas. He farms his chickens and he's out there for every game. And he called me when he found out that I got this opportunity. And he said, "You know I'm hosting you out here, right? You're going to come out here and help me with my chickens." I was like, "I'm not helping with any chickens, but I'll come out and give you some love for sure."
That's
and
so
then,
fun.
It's exciting, guys. It's just exciting to think of Steve Sarkisian and one of my old teammates, Peyton Manning's nephew.
Yeah.
I don't know if Arch is going to be playing in that game, but the prospects of it gives me the chills. The thoughts of my old quarterback coaching my old quarterback's nephew and playing in that game is so exciting to me, to be able to call the action and to love up Steve Sarkisian as a former Cougar and knowing him the way I know him and having played that his senior year with him. And that's an exciting prospect. Guys, I think the four of us, as we sit around, it gives you the chills.
Yeah, I'm excited. T. Boone Pickens Stadium.
Oklahoma State. It's going to be a big-time venue there. They made such great improvements to it, and that renews an old rivalry from back in the 70s that hasn't been contested for a while.
Yes.
A venue where Barry Sanders did amazing work, and we've been to Texas before, but being back at Texas as a conference colleague is a different deal. And he won't be with me for basketball, but you get to talk about places like Fog Allen Fieldhouse, bucket list items in the Big 12. So this should be a fun next few years, however long it is, for Hans and me together to check off all the boxes on all these different Big 12 venues we get to go to, and then to bring programs into Lavell Edwards Stadium. Yeah. And see the Big 12 flags flying in the end zones, right, for those schools, and have different fan bases come and experience what it's like to be at Lavell Edwards Stadium. Baylor, as a Big 12 colleague, most memorably and recently had their fans come to Provo, and it was universal afterward. It's like, wow, how friendly they were, how hospitable it is at BYU, and to be able to be conference colleagues with them. So Baylor kind of set the table for, I think, the rest of the Big 12, and what a good impression BYU's put forth and will continue to put forth, I think, in years to come.
How sweet would it be at the Texas game if the Saints are off and you have Taysom come run out the alumni flag?
Oh, no, that would scare everybody.
It would be so great, it probably wouldn't happen.
There's people that still go to counseling that are Texas fans about that game down there. You realize that?
His iconic leap and all that. Wouldn't that be something?
I'm not sure Texas lets him on the sideline.
So
I think you're right.
You guys, I have a buddy that was a big
I kind of thought that was going to keep us out of the Big 12.
Exactly.
I thought, geez, I don't know if BYU finds their way in, man. Texas is going to keep them arm's length, but where Texas is going to be jetting, they're like, well, okay, but we're leaving. We're out of here. We're not going to stick around for too long.
I have a buddy, you guys, that was an All-American baseball player at Texas that I work with, and we had a thing down in Texas, and he actually arranged for us to have this dinner in their donors box at the stadium. And we walked across the field, and when we got down on one side, he goes, "Hey, by the way, you know what happened right here, don't you?" And I go, "Oh, this isn't, is it?" He goes, "Yep. This is the spot where your dude leaped over our guy." Like it left a scar. It left a scar on him. And he goes, that day left a scar on every Texas fan that is indelible. Will never be erased from our minds. So yeah, if Taysom runs out the flag, advantage BYU.
That would be something else.
I was just talking with my co-host Scotty G today, and we were laughing our butts off because we were thinking, what's the Big 12 going to think at Media Day when all of our entities show up? The Pac-12 just sat there. I remember our first year in the Pac-12. At the time, we had 3 sports stations, but we had all of our news stations. And Lane Kiffin was rotating through stations, and he yelled at Scotty, and he's like, "This is like the 3rd station." And Scotty said, "Yeah, this is your last one for the day." And then he ended up at one of our TV stations, and he yelled at the TV guy. He said, "That old Salt Lake guy, he told me that was the last Salt Lake." And this guy's like, "No, we're the TV." We, as a state, we love our college football. And I think that the Big 12, right out of Media Day, is going to see how much we love it. And they're going to get a taste for how big we make this as a state. And I'm excited for them to see how much we love football here. As Greg mentioned, the fans of these Big 12 teams getting to come into Lavell Edwards Stadium, just see the magnitude, the size of it, and how fans react to it. It's going to be eye-opening for that conference, what BYU does bring to the table.
And I think, too, guys, the fan bases at the venues to which BYU will travel will be astounded by how well BYU puts fans in the stands. And it's not so much that BYU, quote unquote, travels, it's that BYU brings people out of all these places. And these Big 12 schools are going to see this, this royal blue army kind of rolling in and buy up as many seats as they possibly can to watch their guys play. And that's going to be an eye opener too for some of these venues and these fan bases to see, man, this BYU program is everywhere. They're in every building.
Yeah. When Brett Yormark was here for the Baylor game and he was on our set on game day, looking around, the weather was just right, the crowd was huge, and he was just like, "Man, you guys do this every week?"
Yeah, that's what he said. We go, "Yeah, every week."
Yeah, we do. And it just blew his mind to see Lavell Edwards Stadium and Cougar Nation in full force.
Yeah, we're going to be a great fit. BYU is going to be a great fit in this league. BYU already, kind of felt P5 in almost every way except the actual stamp of approval in terms of the media presence, the exposure, the attendance, the history, all of the things that make a big-time program a big-time program. BYU's had that. They didn't have the membership. Now that they have that, it kind of completes the puzzle.
Before Blaine asks you 5 questions, Hans, and then we'll let you go, let's ask you a big one here. The portal opens on April 15th. What 3 areas does BYU need to go to meet some immediate needs for September 2?
Wide receiver number 1, in my opinion. I want to see them go get some wide receiver depth. I want to see them get some real speed. So, in my opinion, wide receiver number 1. Depending on how you felt about your defensive ends through spring, your rush ability, whether it's your OE or it's your down 3, it doesn't matter. You've got to make sure you feel confident that you can get a rush in Jay Hill's defense. And if you don't feel confident, I know DNs are really tough to come by in the transfer portal. But if you don't feel confident about it, then you got to go get some rush edge pressure. You got to find it. I'm hoping it's the Bagnock kid out of Boise State, or I'm hoping that it's Ice Moa. I've got some hopes for some guys, but you've got to make sure you've got that rush come this fall. And then third, I'd probably make sure that I get the depth on corners. If I can get more corner speed, then I go get more corner speed. But I feel pretty good about this transfer running back. I heard you guys talking before I jumped on with you. I feel good about a lot of position groups, but it's those 3 that I would head straight to the portal for.
Greg, do you concur?
Yeah, I'm with him on that. I think secondary depth, it's a rarity that BYU doesn't have secondary depth issues these days, where guys get hurt and they'll be out a little while, they're out a long time, and I think you can't be too deep there. But I agree with the things that Hans said ahead of it, no doubt.
Yeah, and it's interesting before, and maybe you were listening then, Hans, we were talking about BYU feeling really, really good about their starting corners, and really still have questions about the 3 and 4.
Yeah,
and you need to have 4, right? And so maybe you find another. Yeah. And so, yeah, in fact, the entire secondary, they feel really good about the first 4. They feel like it's a Big 12 secondary, but you got to have 8.
Yeah.
You got to have 8. And so they're still trying to build depth there for sure. I think like, without saying too much, we're going to see that there's some defensive linemen that you're going to be happy about, Hans, that are going to come in the portal. I don't know anything about a lid lifter. They need a lid lifter as a wide receiver. The guy that can go, because they lose Gunner and they lose Puka. And Puka's not blazingly fast, but for some reason he could just stretch defenses. When I say they need a lid lifter, they need somebody that can get vertical down the field, that make the safeties respect and create space in the intermediate routes. And I don't know, they have some really good receivers, Keanu and I really like Chase Roberts, but I think they've got to go get a 10-400 meters guy with some size that can stretch the defense, and hopefully they can find that. And I don't know about anything like that, but I think when it's all said and done, on the defensive line, we're going to go, that was nice before that's done. So I'll just leave it at that.
Rarely does Blaine leave anything at that, and so that's significant, Hans, when he leaves that at that. So we'll watch that closely. All right, you ready for 5 questions?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
You're not even allowed
Greg, you're going to get these 2, but
Greg's
later.
Okay. Hans, you're not even allowed to think about these. The first thing that comes to your mind. That's the purpose of this, because then we really get to know who you are, right?
All right.
So I've known him long enough. I think I really know who he is anyhow, but here we go. So your favorite sports movie?
What? A stumper right off the gate? Right out of the gate?
That's not that hard.
Okay, so here's the problem.
Here we go.
I don't know if Gleaming the Cube is a sports movie.
What is Gleaming the Cube? Now I'm really stumped.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah, we're all stumped.
Christian Slater.
Greg, have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of Gleaming the Cube.
Okay, well, at least Greg.
I haven't. Blaine and I haven't.
That's like another level.
It's Vision Quest.
Vision Quest.
The wrestling movie with Journey. Journey had the big song in there.
See, that one we know.
Only the young.
That one we know.
Journey and Madonna.
But now I'm going to have to go look up
the Madonna song was good too.
Gleaming the Cube.
It's a wrestling movie.
Is a skateboarder movie, isn't it?
Vision Quest is a wrestler.
No.
Gleaming the Cube is a skateboard.
Yeah.
Okay, that does skateboard. Okay, I'm not.
Gleaming. Let's just move on past Gleaming the Cube.
I'm going to tell you guys.
Oh my gosh, we've got a graphic up.
We got a graphic up. There it is. It's right over your face, Hans. Gleaming the Cube.
It all. Gleaming.
I get criticized for my movie takes all the time. People hate the movies that I love.
Did you do that? Did you come up with that?
Nice job, DJ.
Way to go,
He
DJ.
may as well have gone over the top with Sylvester Stallone on that one.
Serious.
On a sports movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, let's go with Vision Quest.
Okay, we're going to go with Vision Quest. So, favorite singer or band?
Neil Diamond.
All right, that's classic.
Yeah.
So,
Neil Diamond.
there's a new musical in Broadway.
Broadway.
New
It's got to be awesome.
And
Yes, and my one of my very best friends, that is his best friend from high school. The guy that plays Neil Diamond is from Utah.
yeah, he's a Hale. So like it's
Yes.
it's Will and
And it's called A Beautiful Noise.
yeah,
I
it's a
think.
beautiful
Yes.
noise. You gotta go see that. I've heard
it's gonna be good.
phenomenal things about it.
So I'm gonna go see it, and I've been to 3 Neil Diamond concerts, and when I was with the Colts, I got 2 tickets to Neil Diamond from our GM and Bill Polian, and I asked him 2 months in advance. He goes, just get to me a week before. I went to him a week before. He said, just tell me day of. I told him day of. He gets me 2 tickets, and they actually placed 2 chairs right in front of Neil. And so my wife and I got to sit right in front of Neil.
He was serenading you?
Evening.
Neil was serenading you the whole time?
Serenaded this whole time. And so he dotted his head with his hanky, and he threw his hanky, and it went over my head, and I went to reach for it, and I fell over these older ladies that he was throwing it to, trying to get his hanky. And then he just finished singing Heart Lights. And, after he does Heart Lights, I don't know if you guys have been to his concert.
No, but would love it.
After he does Heart Lights, everybody goes dead quiet because it pulls such emotion. Even though it's a tribute song
From E.T.
To E.T.
which is bonkers. Yeah. It's still an emotional drain. So the entire room, all 30,000 45-year-old women were dead quiet. And I yelled at the top of my lungs 3 feet away, "I love you, Neil." I'm 3 feet away from him. And he got on the mic and he pointed at me. He goes, "I love you too, man."
oh,
And, yeah, it
that's
was.
a special
How about
moment.
that?
Hey,
It
and
was one of those moments in your life where
Hans, I'm glad to see when I threw out the musical thing, I'm glad you were right on top of that, and I'm glad you gave Will Swenson a little pub. So Will's local. He's a
Yes.
Hale, like all the Hale theaters, the Hale Center
Yeah.
Theater in Orem, the big ones up in Salt Lake City. That's his family. Will's married to Audra McDonald, who's one of the biggest Broadway female stars of all time, multi-Tony Award winning. She's also the voice of, is it Mrs. Potts in the Beauty and the Beast?
I believe it is.
Yeah,
yes.
but anyhow, so we'll give Will a little pub there. I'm glad you did that because that's a big deal, and you got to go see that musical. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I will.
It's pretty cool. So
Let us know what you think of it.
Yep.
We'll have you
will.
back on as a reviewist.
Yep, we'll have you. Yeah, we'll bring you back on and review. I had Dave review Moulin Rouge because we went and watched Libby in Moulin Rouge, and
Yeah,
he
that was
liked
fun.
it. He's never been to a Broadway musical until I dragged him.
No, I've been to a few Broadway plays in New York, but not one like that. That was something
Yeah,
else.
yeah. So
that was great.
we took him there. Okay, favorite breakfast cereal.
Chex.
What do you mean
Chex.
Chex? Like rice
Rice
Chex,
Chex.
cinnamon Chex?
Yeah, what's Chex?
Just rice Chex.
Just
I
rice Chex.
I soup it up a little bit, but I take the regular rice Chex. I hit it with some honey. And,
Okay, now we're talking.
yeah, and some vitamin D milk and a banana.
Okay, now
That's-
I'm okay with that because to me, rice Chex just taste like hay, like alfalfa, and like you have to put
He dresses it up. He dresses it
six
up.
tablespoons
Yeah.
of sugar.
Yep.
But now that you added the honey and the bananas, I'm all in on that. That's okay.
Yeah, it's dynamite.
I would also say you could probably add a few blueberries to that, and it would be really, really good. That mix.
that would knock it up a notch.
So okay, rice Chex it is then. Okay, your favorite uncle, is it Merlin or is it Orrin?
Orrin.
It's
And it's not even close.
Not even
Or-
close?
Orrin is a legend, man.
I've only met Merlin a couple of times, but I love Orrin. I got to tell you, I love him.
Orrin's a boss.
Yeah.
And I've always told Orrin if he could just get me into heaven, I'm like, Orrin, I know you've earned like 5 or 6 different free entries into heaven because he served at least 24 missions.
Is that right?
He just wrapped up his 25th with his wife, Sandy. And I'm just begging him, when you get there, please just say, I know Hans is a crazy maniac, but I've worked really hard to get him into heaven. So Orrin by far.
Yeah, Merlin, Utah State, Outland Trophy, one of the greatest defensive linemen in the history of the game, arguably the greatest, right? Orrin chose the right school, went to BYU, played center at BYU, all conference, all WAC back in those days. I love Warren Olsen. One of my favorite people. So, okay. Favorite life-saving story?
Have you heard this one? Greg?
Yes, I've heard this one. That's why I asked it, because we want you to tell about when you saved a life of a drowning motorist on November 5th, 1996.
Greg, have you heard about this?
I did, yeah. You were playing for BYU at the time. This was a big deal.
Greg knows your whole file.
If this had happened in the social media era,
Oh my gosh!
You'd be like Superman.
Like you would have got an NIL deal out of this alone.
All right, so lay it on us.
So I'll make it quick. And it happened to be me and Oren, and it was November 5th, and it was a crazy winter like this. We had insane snow, and Oren wanted to go fish the southeast end of Deer Creek where that inlet comes down, where the road kind of bends up. And his father-in-law was longtime track coach, Coach Robinson, and he came out with us. And I told Oren, I'm like, it's too snowy, not doing it. And Oren's like, you're crazy. I already bought your fishing license. I'm going to get you.
That's Oren. He bought the fishing license.
He comes and picks me up against my will, and we go out to the fishing spot. We get there like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and we're fishing this stream that falls into Deer Creek about 50 yards away from the road. And probably 7:30 in the morning, sideways snow, freezing cold. Oren had fallen in, so he had one leg that was soaked up to his hip. And I don't even know why we're out there, but we hear this screeching tires come off the road. And one of those old power wagons, you remember the power wagon Rams or whatever it was, comes flying off the road. And it starts into a cartwheel spin. So the front's hitting and then the back is hitting. And it's just this cartwheel spin. And it comes about 50 feet down this hill and lands upside down in this huge pond of water that's just below the road. And you could see the tires sticking up. And I thought there's just, when you see that, you don't think there's anybody in the truck. There's nobody in the truck. There's no way there's somebody in the truck in that freezing cold water, underwater. It's just not happening. So I thought he got thrown out. I'm looking all around. My Uncle Oren was actually the tough one. And he jumped in the water. And he's yelling at me, I think he's in the truck. And I was like, no, I don't think he's in the truck. I don't think he's in the truck. And the horn starts honking under the water. If you hear this,
man. Yeah.
And he said, he's in the truck. And so Oren goes down kind of under the water. The water was just up about to his face, and he's reaching in the truck trying to
ice cold water.
This guy. Huh?
Ice cold water.
November
ice cold water.
Right.
And he gets a hold of this guy, and this guy kicks him away. And so Oren pops his head up and he says, get down in here. He's fighting me. And I was like, what? Who would fight you? He's a monster. So I jumped down in the water, and he said, on the count of 3, we're going to go in and we're going to grab this guy. And we're going to get him out of this truck. I said, okay. He said, 1, 2, 3. And we reach in. We both grab this guy, and we pull him to the window. But the window had smashed down. Probably it was like a 10, 12-inch opening. And we grabbed this dude, and both of us, big old monsters, were heaving and hoeing on this guy. I thought we were going to pull him out piece by piece. Finally got this guy out. His name is Tom Swan. He's like 6'6", 380 pounds.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
A massive dude, and we get him out, and the 3 of us are standing there frozen, soaking wet, looking at each other, and Tom's looking at us like, what? And Oren goes, why'd you kick away from me? And he said, because you pulled me from my air pocket. His air pocket was up by the floorboard because the truck was upside down, and he was breathing the air up by the floorboard, and he was getting pulled underwater and away from his air, and so he was kicking away. And he got a big gulp of air when we pulled him through. And the only thing that was wrong with him was a little scratch on his hand.
No kidding.
Wow.
That was it. That was it.
Do you have a relationship with him today?
Yeah, we do. He came to my wedding, and he's stayed close through, my time in the NFL and my broadcasting. And I haven't touched base with him in a little bit, but he had, I believe it was 5 daughters, and he's just a great family man.
Wow.
Unbelievable story. Yeah.
That makes you Superman.
That thing would have been viral. That story would have been viral in today's social media world, but not enough people.
Well,
so now all of our folks are going to hear about it, which is great.
Do you guys remember the radio, man, like Harvey.
Paul
Harvey.
Harvey. The rest of the story.
And now the rest.
I remember listening to that, getting my hair cut at the
Paul
BYU
Harvey,
barber
wasn't he from like
on
Arizona?
Saturday
He
mornings.
lived down the street from Danny Ainge when he and Michelle were living in Arizona, I think.
And
Yeah.
now
Oh,
you
really?
know.
Classic storyteller.
Yeah.
He did that whole story as that, and that's the rest of the story.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Oh wow, yeah, that's
Yeah,
very
and
cool.
I still have it on cassette tape. In fact, I think it might be my mom and dad's most proud moment. Not that I saved somebody, but that Paul Harvey said their son's name. I think that was
He was
a
big
big
time.
moment.
That's
Yep.
great.
He would wrap it up with, "I'm Paul Harvey. Good day."
Yeah, he was good.
Yeah.
He's a classic. He was a classic. So we gave you 5, but I'm going to give you one bonus question. We'll give you a 6 because you're all the guys that played for Lavell are special. They get a 6th question, and that is your favorite piece of advice that you ever got from Lavell.
Oh man, favorite piece of advice that I got from Lavell. Holy cow! I've got a lot of advice from Lavell, but I remember getting pulled into his office my senior year. I had gotten a couple of Senior Bowl invites to go play at the Blue Gray and to go play at the Gridiron Bowl. And I was sitting down with him, and obviously my football career was just up in the air. I was a 6th, 7th round rated free agent. And he leaned across and he said, "I want you to play this game as long as you possibly can." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Play and play and play, because you'll have your whole life to work. So play this game and play with energy and keep your passion and have fun and play this game." And I actually really applied that through my time in the NFL and my time in the AFL. I played nearly as long as I could. I did walk from the AFL on my time, but the broadcast had come and it was a great opportunity to transition. And I still haven't worked. So I just talk about football instead of playing it, still taking his advice. But I thought that was great advice, and advice that I'm sure would really resonate with you guys, that you only get a small window to play this amazing game and to be a part of it. And Lavell's advice was, do it as long as you possibly can, because there's a lot of life to live after it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he gave me that advice.
Yeah, I'm too. Now you get to play with Greg Wrubell, and it's the same game, just a little bit higher up in the
Hans
stadium.
is one of those guys that can say he's just loved what he's called work has never really been work, right, Hans? Your whole life.
Man.
It's a blessed life when you can do what you love your whole life.
I can't even believe
I know Greg
what
would
I
say
get
the
to
same
do.
thing, and I get to say the same thing, and Dave gets to say the same thing, right?
I can't even believe what I get to do. And Greg talked about that first conversation that we had. I still get chills thinking about being in the booth and seeing the coin toss and getting to help break down what BYU's doing in their front alignments and what BYU's doing in an effort to change their protections to solidify the pocket, and what they're doing in motion, and some of the differences from the 2022 defense to the now Jay Hill defense. It gives me chills to think that I'm going to be doing that and getting paid for it, and hanging out with Greg and being able to bring that passion to BYU fans. It's not work, man. It is just going to be pure joy.
Greg and I and Dave have all said to each other at one time or another, "Man, this is so amazing. We would probably do it for free." And then we go,
Don't tell anybody.
"Don't say that to anybody,
because they'll take us up on
don't
it.
say that out loud. Don't let that get out. Whatever you do, right?"
You know, anybody who's heard Hans over the years or watched him or seen this segment even tonight, you know, it's pretty evident of what he's going to bring to the radio airwaves as a BYU analyst. And I have what I call the 3 Ps of play-by-play, but I think they kind of work for analysis too. And he's the embodiment of these. And my 3 Ps are passion, preparation, presentation. Passion, preparation, presentation. Hans has the passion. That drives him. You can tell. Preparation, no one prepares like he does. No one breaks it down like he does. He sees the game in a unique way. And the presentation is who he is, who you hear through the mic and over the headset. And so he aces all 3 Ps. And that's why he's going to be a great game analyst for Cougar Nation. I can't wait to get the season started. And I'm so glad that this relationship exists now. Because, again, till that first telephone call, we knew each other. We'd be around each other. Since I covered them, we'd see each other. But we weren't partners, right? And now we're already partners. And it feels great already. And I think it's a unique relationship. Blaine and Dave, you guys speak to it as well as any. When you have a broadcast partner you're with, and you spend as much time together and as much time on the air together and off air, it becomes a special and unique bond. And I can't wait to spend time with Hans.
Hey, the beauty of this extended winter is the off season's going to seem really short.
That's right.
And you guys will be on the job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Greg, thanks for your endorsement, brother. Thank you for your endorsement, and thank you for this opportunity. And all I can do is try to make you proud and make BYU fans proud and make my family proud. And that is what I'm committed to doing. And I cannot wait. It's going to be incredible. And you're right, Dave. It's going to shorten this off season a little bit. Spring ball flew. I can't believe how early they started. Now you got 3 practices left. I'm going to get out there on Monday and try to pick up a couple things, but we'll be jumping into fall camp before you even know it, guys.
Yeah, it seems like it'll be barely ski season, and then we'll be doing football. Although you can't go skiing because there's too much snow.
Yeah.
When have we ever had that? My kids were going to go skiing today. I came home from work, and I'm like, I thought you were going to go skiing. They go, yeah, we can't. Too much snow.
Too much snow.
That's happened a couple of times. That's when you know you have a wacky year, when you can't go skiing because there's too much snow. Yeah. So,
Hans, welcome to the family. We look forward to having you on this show a lot, and certainly we look forward to your review of It's a Beautiful Sound by Neil Diamond.
When I got to go see whatever
and we'll break down the Cougs as we head into
skateboarding movie.
Dave's going to start Gleaming the Cube tonight.
Gleaming the Cube. I'm going to go watch that.
I don't know if I'm cool enough to even watch that movie, but I'm going to give it a shot.
If we do watch it, it may raise our coolness whatever it's called.
Hans, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Hans.
Thanks, guys.
See you, Hans.
We'll see you, brother.
The great Hans Olsen. And I think he's going to be a blast
to
work with.